Okay, we're going to go over another really important point, and I know I keep saying at the beginning of all these lectures, oh, this is a really important point, but this is a really important point. And we're going to use this statement to help us uncover this important point. The statement is, neither Ferrari nor Maserati makes economy cars. At first glance, this might strike us as a simple statement, but it's actually a compound statement comprised of these two simple statements. Ferrari makes economy cars, Maserati makes economy cars. All right, and we can symbolize those two simple statements using F and M. The question for you is, how would you symbolically represent this neither nor statement using F and M? And I actually want you to pause your video and I want you to come up with a translation of this statement, because we're going to look at a bunch of different possibilities and you want to see kind of where your translation lands in relation to some of these other possibilities. So when you're ready to look at your work, go ahead and restart your video. All right. One way we could translate this statement is as follows. We could use a dot, okay, and a couple of tildes. And this is, I'm going to read to you the way that this sentence reads, symbolize. It is not the case that Ferrari makes economy cars, and it's not the case that Maserati makes economy cars. Neither of them do. And that's exactly what this statement says. So if we use dot to join up these two sentences, we're going to say, like, you know what? Ferrari doesn't make economy cars, and Maserati doesn't make economy cars. That's what tilde F and tilde M say. And when I join them with a dot, I'm saying, yeah, neither one of them do. They both don't, in other words. Okay? But there's another possible translation of this statement. And it looks like this. It has parentheses. Did I just hear you groan? Yes, we're going to use parentheses. We're going to use parentheses and brackets. It's going to be so much fun. Okay. So this statement is... This statement reads like this. So we first have to look at what's in parentheses. Inside the parentheses here is a statement. It's a disjunctive statement. It's an either-or statement. So inside parentheses, this statement reads as follows. Either Ferrari makes economy cars or Maserati makes economy cars. Okay? Now what this tilde is doing is it's operating on whatever comes after it. So the tilde is operating on that entire sentence in parentheses. So when we read this statement, the way we would read it is this. It is not the case that either Ferrari makes economy cars or Maserati makes economy cars. Neither of them do. Okay? So these two statements are actually expressing the exact same information and are logically equivalent. There's a rule that proves that called De Morgan's rule, but the important point for us is that we can see that there may be instances where there's multiple correct translations of any given statement. We just want to make sure that we understand how the statement that we've symbolized reads in its symbolic form. Okay? So take a look at this pair of statements. And I want you to think about how these statements would read and whether or not they're the logically equivalent statements. Are these statements saying the same thing? So I'll read them to you and you see if you can hear any difference, or are these meaning the same thing? This statement says this. It is not the case that Ferrari makes economy cars, and it's not the case that Maserati makes economy cars. Neither of them do. This statement is different though. Okay, so listen to the way it reads. It is not the case that Ferrari makes economy cars and Maserati makes economy cars. Are those two statements saying the same thing? And the answer is no. Because this statement up here at the top is saying, you know what? Neither of them make economy cars. Ferrari doesn't and Maserati doesn't. But this one is saying, you know what? It's not the case that both of them make economy cars. Maybe one of them does, but it's not the case that they both do. Okay, it's not the case that Ferrari makes economy cars and Maserati makes economy cars. So these two statements, even though they look similar, they're not the same thing. Now look at these two statements, and we'll read them. Okay, here we have a disjunct, a wedge. That indicates for us that this is an either-or statement. And with our tildes, the statement would read as follows. It is not the case that Ferrari makes economy cars, or it's not the case that Maserati makes economy cars. Now this statement down here would read as follows. It is not the case that either Ferrari makes economy cars or Maserati makes economy cars. Are those two statements saying the same thing? And once again, the answer is no. This statement up here is saying, oh, you know what? It's either that Ferrari doesn't make economy cars or it's Maserati doesn't make economy cars. I can't remember which one of them doesn't. But this statement down here is saying, you know what? It's not the case that either of them do. They both don't. Neither do. Okay, so the important takeaway here is this, is that we're going to start using parentheses, and we'll explore that a little bit more in the next, I think it's the next lecture. And the important point for us is that tilde does not distribute. So when you see tilde outside of a parentheses, that doesn't mean that the tilde belongs on F and M. and that this statement would be equivalent. We just saw these two statements are not equivalent to one another. Okay, so I know that in algebra that certain terms can distribute into parentheses, but that doesn't work this way in logic. Okay, the tilde operates on the entire thing in parentheses, and we'll talk more about this in our next thought primer. But for now, just know that these kinds of statements and these kinds of statements, they're not logically equivalent. Tilde does not distribute. Make yourself a note of that. It'll save you a headache in the future.